Hello everyone. Once you hit play and can hear my voice, give Mr. Brem, the real one, a thumbs up. And he will give you a thumbs up back. Good. Now stand up, right now, stand up in real life, and proceed to A Hall, Hall A. And while you're walking to A Hall, I want to tell you a story about me that should help you understand this whole course and what we're doing right now. When I was growing up in my home, there was a wall of family photographs, about 20 of them. Now, many of them were of me and my immediate family, yet for about half of the photographs, I had no idea what, or should I say who, they were. I could guess that they were my great-grandparents or even my great-great-grandparents based on the age of the photograph. They stood there in these formal, rigid poses, but I had no idea who they were for years. So one day, when I was around 15 or 16 years old, a little younger than you guys, I asked my mom who they were, and she told me the story. She didn't just say their names, she told me their stories. Who they were, but more than that, how they met, what they did, when they came to America. It wasn't just a list of dates, it was a vibrant story of my family, full of drama, despite the calmness of the photographs. I had walked past these photos every day for years without knowing the stories and without really noticing the pictures themselves. What does that have to do with us? By now, hopefully, you're inside of A Hall, and so now I want you to look up. Not at the ceiling, but at the top of the wall, above the lockers and the doors. These are probably the most overlooked pictures of St. Mary's, like so many trophies and plaques that no one can really remember what dramatic victory earned them. These are 21 paintings, each portraying one century of church history. Start walking down the hall to the doors of rooms 1 and 3. And as you walk down, you will see these admittedly faded pictures, but each one conveys a myriad of stories and lessons. I'm going to share multiple lessons as we go through. After all, why do we study history? Not just to know what happened, but to learn from what happened, to not make the mistakes of the past. And the reverse is also true. In the past, we can also find brave, heroic, noble figures, especially in the saints. And these are excellent witnesses, or to put it in Greek, martyrs, for us to imitate. Another reason to study history is because our family, our ancestors, took part in history. You wouldn't be who you are or where you are today if it weren't for the decisions, the choices, the lives, and even the deaths of your family members over the millennia. Finally, history is fun. It's not just a story, history, but it is the story, the ultimate story, the story of what has actually happened. By now you should be standing between rooms 1, 2, and 3. On your left, the side with rooms 1 and 3, you will see the 20th century, filled with its list of martyrs, and Mother Teresa, and even a nuclear bomb exploding in the background. Now, why am I starting at the end of history? Because all of the present is built on the past. And for this brief moment, I will show you how not just the church, but our whole world came to be where it is by starting at the present and rewinding through the past. So here we see a century filled with war and dissent, and the church trying to get by in the world, not too successfully. But where did it come from? Start going to the left of the picture, to the picture just on the other side of the door to room 3, and you'll see the 19th century. The 19th century was filled with revolution and a changing view of how the world should work, how nations and how the church should exist. This was famously the century in which the church no longer became synonymous with a country, as we'll see in this course. But let's head even further backwards. So continue going to your left. Go to the 18th century, which is just to the right of the door to room 7. We see here one of the easier icons to spot, the guillotine, the famous instrument of death of the French Revolution. Now, the French Revolution was very connected to the American Revolution, and yet was an entirely new sort of problem, bringing about some good, but causing much of the disruptiveness that characterizes the later 19th century. Let's go even further back to the 17th century, which is just to the left of the room 7 door. We see here featured prominently in the foreground the wars of religion, not just one, but a whole series of wars within multiple countries and even involving multiple countries. The precursor to the world wars takes place here. One of the important lessons for history is quite simply that division leads to violence. Historically, if people disagree, that disagreement festers and becomes bloodshed. Head even further to your left to the 16th century. There is so much on this one picture. The Protestant Reformation, or as it was originally known, the Protestant Revolt, the Counter-Reformation, the Age of Discovery. On the left, you can easily spy Luther, Zwingli, and King Henry VIII. Yet why did they do what they did? For what purpose? This is one of the divisions from which the church has never healed, and even in a strange way has shaped not just our world, but even our world markets and global economies, as you will eventually learn. Go back another picture to the 15th century. You'll notice the art of the Renaissance and a strange event known as the Bonfire of the Vanities. There's an important lesson that I want to impart here. The Catholic Church is forever torn between two polar opposites, to extremism and to laxity. Some want the church to lighten up. Others want it to toughen up on everyone. This is nothing new, and the time period of the Renaissance gave a particular insight into this problem. Also on the left side of the same picture, you will see the Maid of Orleans herself, Saint Joan of Arc. Quite honestly, one of the most fascinating saints, women, people, generals, leaders, teenagers ever. I want you to remember Joan of Arc for something that I'm going to mention later. Again, go to the left of this and you'll see the 14th century. Aside from the horrific Black Death in the center of the piece, which claimed the lives of millions, on the right, you'll see something that's actually strange. 3 popes, because for some years, 3 men all claimed simultaneously to be the pope. Why? Because of another lesson of history. Despite the graces God has bestowed on his church, we humans are still foolish and make mistakes. Go another picture to the left, the 13th century, and you'll see 2 important cases that I want to illustrate. While members of the church are fallible, many have wondered why the church or the popes or Catholics in general have done what they have done throughout the centuries. And 2 of the most famous cases are demonstrated in the 13th century, with the Crusades and the Inquisition. While much needs to be explained, clarified, the Inquisition began because of the Crusades. And actually, one crusade fought in an interesting place. But I'll say more about this around the midway point of the year. If you go back through the 12th and 11th century pictures, you'll notice more of the Crusades. Any student of history will tell you that some cataclysmic events of history get decided on the battlefield. And so we must turn to the battlefield frequently, and even see ways that the church has curbed violence that lasted from the 11th century through the 20th. Continue traveling to your left 2 more pictures to the 9th century. You'll see a Viking ship in the background. On the far left is an image of a pope crowning a man kneeling against his sword. While I could tell you that kneeling man is Charlemagne, I want to impart another lesson, one that permeates much of church history in either direction. The people in charge of the world tend to get involved with the church. This course will not be a mere study of popes and bishops, of course we'll cover them, but we'll also cover the emperors, princes, kings, chiefs, queens, empresses, and all manner of politicians and statesmen, because church history and human history are intertwined. They are not simply two timelines that travel together in parallel lines that never converge. No, each is part of the other. The world has affected the church, and the church has affected the world. There's more that I could point out on this wall, but instead turn around to the opposite wall. On the far right, you'll see the 7th century with the meteoric rise of Islam. From there, go 2 pictures to the left to the 5th century, and you should be able to find St. Patrick, of whom most of you know at least the general story. Always remember another lesson of church history. Holiness attracts. Where there is outstanding goodness, it tends to attract followers. And again, I want you to keep St. Patrick in the back of your mind for just another few moments. Go another picture to the left, the last one before room 8, and you'll see the 4th century. I want to emphasize the figure riding the horse. That man is Constantine. This one man allowed Christianity to become legal and, in a certain way, to win, but only because he already had won a battle. And he won a battle because before that, he rode a horse across a continent, but that's a story that I will tell you later. It's a good story as well. Go quite a bit further down to the picture right above the door to room 6. This is the 3rd century, and you can see a glimpse of the persecution faced by the church in the centuries, plural, leading up to Constantine. Here in the middle of this picture, you can find the early Christians driven underground, literally, unlike the symbolic name of the Underground Railroad. The early Christians truly hid and worshipped in the catacombs. And yet they not only survived, they ultimately won. They attracted more followers. Why? Because of another lesson of church history. God is with his church. Continue walking to your left. Walk past the 2nd century with its many martyrs, right next to the door of room 4. And just continue until you reach the pictures surrounding room 2. On the 1st century, you'll see the beginning of the church. It might seem strange, but what I wish to point out is that ship in the middle of the background. That ship is going to play a role in all of this from the beginning to the end, from the time of Peter to the time of Pope Francis. Lastly, go to the first picture. Why do we end with the crucifixion? Quite honestly, because it all began here. Because 2,000 years ago, this man was sentenced to death by the local government. Yep, this has happened to many before. The grand difference is that a few days later, he wasn't dead. And that has made all the difference. We even have recalibrated our years so that his entrance into the world is year 1 AD. And now it's time to return to class. So begin walking back to Mr. Brem's classroom. But I want to share with you, while you're walking, 3 other rules of church history. The first is that people then are very similar to people now. While we are studying figures who lived in a different world, we're all motivated by many similar things, as we'll see, even being pressured by family members to go to college and pursue a career that we don't want. Another lesson of history is that faith matters. Religion is not just a private experience that takes up 1 hour of our Sundays. If so, no one would really care. Religions change societies. They change cultures. That's where the word culture comes from, is cult, religion. And it has been Christianity and the Catholic Church that has shaped Western civilization. A final lesson of church history and all history is that an individual person can make a difference. I don't say that to sound like a dumb motivational poster. History gives us numerous examples of an individual person making one choice that drastically alters the course of history, for better or for worse, whether with Joan of Arc, or Patrick, or Constantine, or Charlemagne, or all of the villains of history. all the enemies of Christ and his church. Never forget that lesson. I hope you've enjoyed this audio tour. So please finish walking back to Mr. Brem's room, and we will pick up from there. Goodbye.